Hello everybody, Dr. Pam Popper here with Wellness Forum Health. I want to talk to you today about your amazing microbiome. Housed in your gastrointestinal tract is a group of about 100 trillion bacteria, which if you could gather them all up in one place and put them on a plate, weigh about 4 pounds. The composition of your microbiome is a little bit like a fingerprint. It differs from person to person, and yours is quite unique and unique to you. This microbiome is acquired through a variety of means, and the process actually begins in the placenta, where the fetus acquires some bacteria in the womb. This then accelerates as a baby passes through the birth canal and acquires even more bacteria from mom during birth. Breastfeeding provides the very best food for the intestinal bacteria, and if all goes well, within a fairly short period of time, a healthy human has over 1,000 different types of bacteria, containing 7 million genes, 360 bacterial genes for every human gene. In other words, there's more genetic diversity in the bacteria in your gut than there is in your entire body. Now, these bacteria are not part of your body. They're essentially renters who provide important services to you in exchange for food and lodging. Humans and bacteria depend on one another for survival, but if we're really honest, the bacteria do much more for us than we do for them. Just a few of the things your bacteria do for you include assisting in the digestion of food, production of short-chain fatty acids and small amounts of certain vitamins, and controlling the population of pathogenic bacteria like C. diff. Your bacteria also assist with nutrient assimilation and provide a barrier which prevents things like partially digested food fragments and waste products and viruses from getting into your bloodstream. 90% of known pathogens enter the body via the GI tract, so the barrier function is a very, very important function that your bacteria provide for you. By far, one of the most important things your bacteria do for you is to operate your immune system. This involves triggering an immune response when necessary, but also knowing how to switch off the immune system when the threat is over. This operates a little bit like the feedback loop on your furnace or your thermostat. So you set the temperature at 70 degrees in your house, and when the temperature drops to, say, 68 degrees, the thermostat kicks on the furnace, and when the temperature gets back up to 70 degrees, it kicks off again. This, in simple terms, is really how the bugs in the gut regulate your immunity for you. They don't leave the gut, but rather send out signals so that the immune system knows when to switch on and when to switch off. So they'll trigger the production of antibodies to fight an infection, for example, and then later they'll trigger the production of cells that switch off the immune system when the threat is over. Our gut bacteria are pretty intelligent little critters, and they talk to each other, and they also communicate with our brain. There are many methods of communication, and that includes sending signals through the bloodstream and also through the vagus nerve. But here's what's really interesting. For a long time we thought that all of the messages, or most of them, were coming from the brain to the gut, but 90% of the messages are actually transmitted from the gut to the brain. In addition to all of the things I've already told you that our gut bacteria do, they also contribute to our emotional state. We actually experience emotions in the gut, which is reflected in some of the expressions that we have in our language. I'm sure you've heard things like, "I have a gut instinct about this." That was a gut-wrenching experience. "I have butterflies in my stomach. I'm all choked up." I don't think people really think about the importance of those types of statements, but they go to the fact that our gastrointestinal tract and the bacteria in the GI tract play a very important role in emotional regulation. Well, if you're like most people who hear this information, you have a new appreciation for your gut bacteria and might be interested in taking better care of these critters. So how do you do this? Well, first, try to avoid things that damage your microbiome, and some of them include taking antibiotics, because particularly broad-spectrum antibiotics kill all bacteria, including the bacteria in your gut. Another thing I'll mention is the food supply. If you're eating conventionally raised animal foods and farmed fish, 75%, even maybe a little bit more by now, of the antibiotics manufactured in the United States are injected into or given in the feed of farm animals to plump them up faster and prevent infection in these god-awful facilities. So make sure you're not eating that kind of stuff. Another drug that's overused used that contributes to destruction of gut bacteria are nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And people take them from time to time for a headache, but unfortunately a lot of people take them way too often. They've become like a daily pain reliever, and that's not such a good idea. Also antacids, which are overused. But perhaps the most important thing you can do has to do with your diet, and that's adopting a plant-based diet. Your beneficial gut bacteria actually like and require the types of foods that are best for the rest of your body, for example, your cardiovascular system too. They like fiber and carbohydrate, and in fact, the foods that contain fiber and carbohydrate are the best foods for you to eat. On the other hand, your pathogenic bacteria love animal protein and fat and processed foods. It's one of the reasons, by the way, why vegetarians and plant eaters consistently have bigger populations of beneficial bacteria than the carnivores do. Now, studies have consistently shown this relationship between the bacteria in your gut and the diets you eat. One study showed that the guts of Africans eating a high-fiber diet were much healthier than the guts of Europeans eating a higher fat diet. A study of Slovenian vegans showed that their guts had increased populations of certain beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids that reduce inflammation. Important because inflammation is a common denominator of almost any disease you don't want to get. Fecal samples from vegans show that the pH of the gut is lower than that of people who are not plant eaters, and this is important because your pathogenic bacteria like E. coli, they don't like that acidic environment. They would much more prefer an alkaline environment. Yet another study showed that if you increase your fiber intake by just 7 grams per day, you end up with increased populations of beneficial bacteria. A review of studies that looked at the connection between vegan diets, gut bacteria, and inflammation-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, and diabetes concluded, and I'll read you this quote because I think it's really cool and important. The vegan gut profile appears to be unique in several characteristics, including a reduced abundance of pathogenic bacteria, a greater abundance of protective species. Vegans also appear to lack the intestinal microbiota for converting dietary L-carnitine into the pro-atherosclerotic TMAO. In other words, if you're eating a plant-based diet, you don't even have the bacteria that can convert dietary L-carnitine into something that can damage your arteries. Reduced levels of inflammation may be the key feature linking the vegan gut microbiota with protective health benefits. Well, you might be thinking by now, gosh, my microbiome is in terrible shape. I was formula fed as a baby. I've eaten a lot of animal foods and processed foods over my whole life. I've taken antibiotics several times. My bacteria might be really upset with me by now. Well, I have some good news for you. This can all be fixed. Within just 2 weeks of adopting a better diet, it doesn't have to be vegan, it just has to be plant-based. The composition of your microbiome begins to change in a positive way. The pH of the gut shifts and the environment starts to become an unfriendly place for your pathogenic bacteria to hang out. The beneficial bacteria start thriving, your inflammation levels go down, your immune system starts to become stronger, and that barrier system that keeps things out of your bloodstream that shouldn't be getting in, it starts to become stronger too. In addition to eating more plants, eating less processed food and more whole plant food instead helps the restoration process as well. The foods your gut bacteria love the most are high-fiber foods like fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. You already know that these foods are good for you. This short talk on your microbiome just shows one more way in which the foods are good for you and one more motivation to eat more of them. Well, I've been recommending plant-based diets as a means of promoting good health for over 25 years, but in addition to this general advice, I'd like to challenge you to commit to add an extra serving of plant food to your diet every day for the next 2 weeks, the period of time required to begin the shift to a healthier state. It can be another piece of fruit, an extra serving of greens added to your morning smoothie, another cup of greens added to your salad at lunch or dinner, a cup of chickpeas added to your salad, a bigger serving of vegetables at any meal, a sweet potato for a snack, just one more serving. And I want you to think about dedicating it to the critters in your gut that are working hard to keep you healthy. The healthier they are, the healthier you are. Thank you for watching.